Okay, let's get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Brown University Master of Science and Technology Leadership webinar. My name is Pete Chomowicz. I'm the program director, and along with me is our academic director, Larisa Leventon, and one of our faculty, Ed Barrows. Larisa and I are going to give a short overview of the program, and then Ed is going to give us a feel from one of his lectures on the foundations of leadership. And then there'll be time in about 30 minutes or so for you to ask any questions you'd like about the program or Ed's lecture. So let me share my screen. We absolutely welcome your questions, your participation. And as I mentioned, you can do so in about 30 minutes using the Q&A function. The chat function is disabled. So joining us today is Professor Ed Barrows. Ed is professor of the practice of leadership in the School of Professional Studies here at Brown. He teaches a number of courses on leadership and is also the new academic director for one of our new master's programs in organizational leadership. He has worked with leaders at all levels of strategy and strategic leadership, and leader for the last 25 years. Prior to joining Brown, Ed worked as managing director at Duke Corporate Education, where he was responsible for designing and delivering programs for a portfolio of Fortune 100 clients. He has also held positions at Deloitte, General Electric, PwC, and teaching engagements at Harvard, Boston College, and Babson. He is the author of a number of books, and he is a former Marine Lieutenant Colonel with a background in logistics. I'm very pleased to have Ed on our faculty and with us this afternoon. So let's talk about MTL. Here's our tagline for the program: we build tech leaders. And in the next few minutes, Larisa and I are going to be talking about what do we mean by leadership and what do we mean by technology. So a quick look at who is the program a good fit for and who is it not a good fit. It's not a great fit for professionals who want to stay as individual contributors, for people who want a heavily STEM-focused curriculum. We have a lot of master's and PhD programs here at Brown. If you want to deepen your technical expertise, you can certainly check those out. And it's not a great fit for learners who either want a fully online or fully remote education. And we're going to be talking in a minute about the hybrid nature of our curriculum. MTL is a very good fit for those who wish to understand the business implications of emerging technologies, leaders who want a fast, focused master's degree targeted to their career aspirations, students who want a hybrid experience that combines the best of online and in-person instruction, people sensitive to a return on investment, and professionals interested in building their network. I love this picture. It's the front lawn of our School of Engineering. The MTL program is a Master's of Science, and it is in partnership with the Brown School of Engineering. And our academic director, Larisa, in fact, who you'll hear from in a moment, is on their faculty. And this is a sculpture on the front lawn. It's also a functional object. It's a Mobius strip, but it's also a sundial. But it just reminds me of the complexity of the world that we live in and how much technology is changing every aspect of our lives, our businesses, and society. And it's from that observation of technology, its complexity, its force of change, that technology itself is undergoing and creating rapid and disruptive change all around us. And so we have built a curriculum in 3 broad areas: in personal leadership development, analytical decision-making, and strategic thinking. And you, the student, you sit at the center of everything that we do. Against this curriculum is the role of technology. So there aren't courses per se in technology, but rather technology is the backdrop. It's woven throughout everything that we do and talk about in the MTL program. Our aspiration is to transform those working in technology into strategic, innovative, and impactful leaders prepared to meet the world's new and evolving demands. To meet those demands, To embrace this complexity that I'm talking about, we're harnessing faculty, departments, and centers all across the university. So we have faculty from the School of Engineering, from Cognitive and Psychological Sciences, from the Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs. We have faculty from Theater Arts and Performance, in partnership with the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. We have faculty from other universities like the Rhode Island School of Design. And many of our faculty also have extensive experience in industry. They come from finance, tech development, law, architecture, engineering, journalism, design, and defense. I'm going to turn it over to Larisa now to talk about our faculty.
The personal leadership development courses are courses that develop you as an individual. The questions we would like you to ask and answer as you go through our program is, who are you? How do you lead? What are your strengths and areas of growth? At Brown and MTL, we do not believe that there is a single model for leadership, but that is something that is bespoke. You will work very closely with our faculty on this exploration and to also develop your own unique leadership model. And you will hear from one of our faculty members later today who teaches Leadership Lab, Ed Barrows. So you can come to campus twice for 4 days each for a deep dive into persuasive communication and leadership. And then in addition to this, you will also work with our leadership and communication coaches one-on-one to explore and develop on who you are as a leader. And then on the more theoretical level, you'll see the courses on the left. And both faculty members have been with us since the beginning. Next, please. These are the courses in analytical decision-making. Ruben teaches at Brown, teaches at RISD. He has been on the staff of the Washington Post, and his course looks at the use of data. How do we make persuasive arguments through visualization of data? His course works with both persuasive communications and data analytics, which is, you'll see on the right, taught by Adam Breff. And Banu is a longtime faculty member at Brown, a prolific author, also teaches at the School of Engineering. And her course will expose you to the type of skills and thinking that you need to innovate and to be an agent of change, whether you're an entrepreneur or within the context of a larger organization. Next, please. And this is our group of courses in strategic thinking. These are the kinds of things that any leader in any organization must be conversant in. All of these courses will help you better navigate uncertainty and become the agent of change. Next, please. And our fourth category is the Critical Challenge Project, which we call the CCP. This is the core of the curriculum, and it gives you a chance to put what we're teaching you into practice with our mentorship. This is a student-identified project that is in need of a leadership solution. We will provide framework and guidance, and it will lead you to take an application, a very practical application of the coursework that you've been taught, and also the leadership skills that you're developing. So this can be either an entrepreneurial project within a large corporation. It can be a new idea that you wanted to try for yourself and start your own company. It can be process improvement. Maybe you see something that could be done more efficiently, effectively. It can also be a thought leadership project. So how do you position yourself as a thought leader in your organization or in your industry? And this course takes place during 1 semester. Next, please. So this list gives you an idea of what a few past CCP projects have been and which industry they come from. And there are many, many more exciting projects that I see every year. So as you can see, our students come from every industry that you can imagine. When we have found that these projects increase the students' visibility in their organization or industry, and being able to put to use what you have learned under the guidance of our faculty can be transformational to you as a person and also for your career trajectory. Next, please. So do you want to take this over, Peter?
Yep, sure. I'll take the next few. Thanks, Larissa. Another course offering that we have is an optional certificate with Oxford University. It's fully online, and students can choose from one of these 4 courses. They're about 6 or 7 weeks, and as I said, it's included in the tuition. It's optional whether you want to do it or not. So ESG and Sustainable Financial Strategy, AI Ethics is one of the most popular ones amongst our students at the moment, cybersecurity, and fintech. So putting all this together, the curriculum, keeping in mind the student always at the center, thinking about what are the skills and experiences that you need to navigate your turbulent environment. It's our ambition that the curriculum is enabling you to navigate change, to resolve conflict, analyze new and emerging markets, make sound decision-making, particularly when the environment of that decision is far from certain. Defining one's ethical compass, addressing sustainability in all of its forms, managing crises, developing new products, expanding globally, building and managing teams. The program, as I mentioned a moment ago, it is a Master's of Science. It's not an executive program. It's a partnership with our School of Engineering. It's 12 months, 3 consecutive semesters. You can begin in the fall or the spring. It's a blended low residency, 2 campus visits. You come for 4 days in September. You come again for 4 days in February. Students have on average about 10 years of work experience. Some have a bit less, some have quite a bit more. And the tuition here is $75,500. I won't go through all of the boxes on this chart, but it's just an illustration of how the curriculum maps to each semester. So you can see you can enter the program in the fall. You come for the 2 courses above the blue line, the CCP that Larissa teaches and persuasive communication. And then you have the 3 courses below it. Spring is the heaviest semester, 6 courses. You're not taking all 6 simultaneously. You'll take 3, and then that last half a semester, and then there's a break, and then you take the other 3. And you come again in February for the Ed's course on leadership. You'll work with him and his coaches on that, developing that authentic sense of who you are as a leader. And then in summer, the lightest course offering. And that's when most of our students will take the Oxford certificate. Just a quick snapshot. A lot of these are brands that are known, very common to all of us. Our students come from all across the country and from every industry and company you can imagine. So some in big tech, from Google, from Amazon, Adobe, some from law enforcement, like the FBI or defense contracting, oil and gas, renewables, finance, law. Many of our students already have MBAs before they enter the program. We've done a webinar, a chat with them about how the MTL degree is very complementary to their business background, but many do not. And I would say on average about half of our students have a STEM background and they're working as STEM professionals, but the other half don't. They might come from journalism or law or sales and marketing. But all of them find themselves at a very turbulent intersection of business, strategy, and technology. Return on investment, so about 84% promoted within a year of graduation, nearly half promoted while still in the program, and about 25%, almost a quarter, promoted to vice president or C-suite. The application is very straightforward, and I have here a couple of hints for all of you. So there's a form and fee. The fee is waived for those of you joining us this afternoon. And the statement is in 3 very short sections. Describe why Brown, what do you hope to learn in the program, and because we are a cohort model, because you're going to work on teams with fellow students, you're going to be here in person, how will you enrich and help the journey of others? And then there's a couple of other short, very short essays about time management. It is an intensive course. It's 12 months, 12 consecutive months. So you're going to need 20 to 25 hours a week. Some semesters, again, the spring semester is heavier than the others, but think about how you're going to block that time out. There's an opportunity for you to add anything you'd like us to know about yourself. And then for those of you, if your undergraduate GPA is not what you would have liked, there's an opportunity for you to describe that experience and what have you learned in the intervening years where you feel you're now prepared for graduate study. So our number one suggestion for the application is be specific. We want to understand that you understand the program. So that you've looked, you're here with us today, you're learning about it. Make sure you look at our website, review the courses, our faculty, their background, talk to our alumni ambassadors. Feel free to reach out to me or Larisa or Ed or any of our faculty if you have questions. So be specific. Make sure that you understand this is a good program for you and your career aspirations. You can do the interview one of two ways. You can record it, or you can meet with us for a 15-minute interview. 3 letters of recommendation. Again, the more specific, the better. So the strongest letters are from people from your workplace, supervisors, people that are up in your company that have observed your performance. Those are strong letters. Letters that are from colleagues or friends, not so strong. Again, be specific, and then your resume and official transcripts. So the final deadline for entering in the fall semester is June 15th. And then you can see here for those that are interested in joining us in the spring, we have a number of priority deadlines. The advantage of a priority deadline is it is a competitive application, so the seats do fill up. So applying early gives you a better chance of being admitted. And it means we also have greater scholarship money available. As I mentioned, all of us in MTL are available to talk with you about your interest in the program. And in particular, my colleague, Susan, you can reach her at professional@brown.edu. Okay, so let's turn it over to Ed to learn about the foundations of leadership.
All right, thank you, Peter, and Larisa, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you. And I want to just dovetail on a few things that Peter said. You could see the slide presentation. And I did ask our administrator, Emma, to make the chat so that we can have a quick conversation in it. But I think it's really important, as Peter said, that you pick the program because of its focus on leadership. And I had my office hours last night with my MTL cohort that is in process in stream right now. And we do have people with Ivy League MBAs. We do have people who have law degrees. We do have people who even have doctorates in education. And what they're coming here for is the specific focus on leader development, which enables them to take on greater responsibility and advance in their careers. And I think that's really important. And I think Brown brings a really unique perspective to that. Certainly, we have a deep analytical and engineering and technology background at the university. But within the School of Professional Studies, we really, as you saw with the faculty that Peter pointed out, we really marshal, and Larissa as well, we marshal people from a wide variety of capabilities. For instance, we have an executive coaching organization that we work with, have been providing leadership coaching for years and years, as well as certifications in that area. We are intending on bringing out a new Master of Organizational Leadership. So the point here is the program's really focused on leadership. And the course I teach, and I'm going to talk about briefly, is really focused on you as a leader. How do you lead? As Larissa pointed out, how do I think about the models and frameworks that I can use and bring to bear? The course that I teach focuses on 2 dimensions, and we've realigned that over the last year thanks to input from our former students, from Peter and Larissa, around a leadership lab up front, which is a really intensive experience where we have an opportunity to look at you. We examine you literally. You examine yourselves in terms of how you lead, what your strengths and capabilities are, where you need to shore things up. We have a 360-degree assessment process we use with the Center of Creative Leadership, one of the best leadership development firms that's around, that really helps you start to understand, where your strengths, where your gaps, and how to develop those. So all of that is to say that we have people with Ivy League MBAs that come here, and the comments that they make for us is, this is by far the best leadership development experience I've ever had. And that comes from people who have had military experience, deep technology experience, as well as other graduate degrees. So it's a program that really tops up and explores and develops your leadership. But what I want to talk about today, just a few things. Most of us have experience in leadership, if not in our workplace, and we will hopefully have that soon. As Peter pointed out, it's for people who want to get ahead in the technology setting by and large, or even starting your own organization where you'll have to draw on strong leadership skills. But we all have a concept and conception of what leadership is. So I'm going to ask you at the outset, how do you define leadership? We'll talk about leadership thinking, where it's come from over the past 100 or so years, even longer than that if you go back to some of the ancients and the classics. We'll talk about some of the key elements that does come from work that the Center for Creative Leadership has done. And then I'm going to leave you with some tangible takeaways. And these are just a scratching of the surface of the deep dives that we do in the class. So this will give you a flavor for what we work on. There is clearly no shortage of leadership thinking. And as Peter pointed out, I've even contributed to the books on the topic, for better or worse. But what we ask ourselves is, what is leadership? So I'm asking you to weigh in here and define it on your own. I'd love to see a few people put it in the chat. How would you define leadership? I think it's enabled, so you should be able to put it in there. How would you define leadership? It would be great to hear what you think. We'll see who's brave enough to participate. I think we're going to pay attention to who responds, Peter, right? Because those will be the folks that we know are interested in joining the next cohort.
For sure, Ed. Yeah.
Oh, we have a quiet bunch today, I guess. No one's brave enough to share their thoughts on what leadership is.
Maybe it's raining.
There we go. Helping those who are frozen. Oh, I like that, Alexis. That's great. Leadership is definitely a path of guidance. Interesting. I guess as we think about it, a lot of what we're doing as leaders is hopefully guiding other people. So thank you for that. Any other brave souls out there willing to share their thoughts on what leadership is? Influence is usually a big part of it. So thank you for that. We actually talk about that in the course. So the reason I like to start with that is what you find is it's kind of like that. I think that analogy of the elephant. Everyone usually has one piece of it. It's the 12 or so people that are touching the elephant who are blind. I've got the tail, I've got a tusk, I've got the trunk, I'm touching an ear. We really want to pull these different views together. And as Mara's saying, it's this guide, inspire, influence. These are all great definitions. Well, we want to work on this both in the theoretical and I would say the very practical, tangible, applicable sense. So real simply, just the definition that I use is leadership is organizing a group of people to accomplish a common goal. But in that are many of the things that you've highlighted around influence, around guidance, around direction. When we think about leadership thinking, and this comes from a book in its 10th edition by a professor named Peter Northouse, quite good, a real summary of some of the most important leadership theories. We can go way back to what was called the great man theory, wouldn't you say the great man theory today, but this is what it was called. And we saw the leader as a hero. The idea is if we wanted to understand leadership, we had to study some of these great heroes. And we see that today, a lot of the pull through on the classic literature. And the Stoics in particular today, Marcus Aurelius. There's a trait theory and all these theories are wrong. And I say that in a not just tongue in cheek, but they're all partial. The idea is we still use pieces and parts of them today. So leadership as a set of characteristics, typically people who are leaders are outgoing or extrovert, but not always the case. They tend to be intelligent, which is, I'm sure, everybody on the call. But the idea is there are some things that we look for leaders to have from a set of traits. Additionally, and this is embedded in the course that I teach, is a skills approach. Our view is that everyone can be a better leader. That's why you're here if you come, and we want to help you have the skills to do that. There's specific ways to influence and persuade. It's important to understand how politics work in an organization. It's important to understand how to build a team and collaborate, because if you're a team leader or a manager, you'll have to lead people who do that in addition to doing it yourself. So there's skills that we can learn and behaviors that we can apply that will enable us to be better leaders. we've probably heard the term leadership is situational. That's true, but there's actually a set of models and theories called situational leadership 1 and 2 that we can study that helps us understand how leaders adapt themselves to the behavior and the experience level of their teams. Some of you may have heard of servant leadership, or even call yourself a servant leader, as developed by Robert Greenleaf in the early 1970s from his work as a manager at AT&T. How is it that we create an environment where we give people the tools and the empowerment they need to be effective in the work they do? There's still a need for transformational leadership in organizations. Many businesses and organizations are going through some type of major transformation, a lot of it related to technology, but not exclusively. So then the question is, how do I engage my organization or my team so that they're coming along with the journey with me, but they're getting something out of it? They're being transformed as well. Adaptive leadership is something that we've used in the program in the past. We use it more now these days in our healthcare program, and we tend to focus a lot on authentic leadership, specifically work that's been done by Bill George at Harvard Business School and how it applies to this setting in particular. So we use these theories, we review them, but we focus on authentic leadership in addition to the skills approach. But what is the work of leaders? When we think about leaders as pushing an organization forward, what do they do? Well, one of the things that leaders need to do is acknowledge the past. I'm guessing that the organizations that some of you come from have been around for a while. In the tech space, they can be new and they can be evolving pretty quickly. But there are some longstanding companies like IBM, for instance, still a tech company. We want to be able to understand what the important elements of our past are. And we use an activity I think about called roots and chains. What are the roots that we want to hold on to as leaders as we transform, because they give us energy. They actually give us, they're a source of nourishment for our organization. We would never want to cut those. But what are the chains that we want to break so that we can be the organization we need to be? Leaders have to not only understand that, they also have to have a vision for the future. And that's where that strategic thinking comes in that we mentioned at the outset as one of those 3 domains of the program. Leaders have to be able to understand the past, but also acknowledge the past and understand where the future is going and have a vision to get there. So we have to get rid of the things or change the things that are not working, but also incorporate changes that are needed. And oftentimes that comes around technology. So that's why this program is so essential. Yet at the same time, we have to preserve the core DNA of what makes us a unique organization. And I was just with a leadership team yesterday. I was working with them on site. And as we were building out this newly formed team, the leader of the team said, in our organization, if you don't fit here, it's like an organ rejection. You won't stay very long. Can you understand the values? Can you assimilate to the culture? Can you develop people within the context that you work in? Because understanding how all of that works in this thing we're calling the DNA of the organization is essential. And leaders are responsible for guiding that process. Some of you have done that in pieces and parts, and some of you will do that, but it's one of the important mandates that you have as a leader today. So how does leadership work? Going through all those different theories, and again, everyone has in their own mind, and you will create, as Larisa pointed out, your own conception of leadership that works for you. But we think about leadership today differently than maybe we have in the past. It's not necessarily a top-down process where a leader at the top tells the organization what they're going to do, and everybody in the hierarchy or in their bureaucracy just does it without questioning. Certainly, there are some elements and aspects of hierarchy and what we would call a mechanistic view of organizational life that applies today. We need bureaucracies. They enable us to get things done effectively. But we see leadership today as a social process that enables individuals to come together and work effectively as a cohesive group that drives collective results. So the 3, I would call legs of the stool that enable that are direction, alignment, and commitment. And that's something I'm going to give you today as a takeaway, if you haven't seen this before, to test on your own teams, because you can do it. So the question really comes down to, does your team have, or the teams that you participate on, even if you're not the team leader, you can help have the discussion around these different variables. Is there agreement on where we're going as a group and what we want to accomplish? That's direction. Is everybody have a clear, pull my military terminology, sight picture of what the future looks like? Are we aligned? Are we coordinated and working on the pieces and components, both, I would say, vertically, horizontally, and in some cases, diagonally, that we need to accomplish as a group? Are we working in the areas that are specific to us while coordinating horizontally in some cases. And then are we committed to that? Does everyone have a sense of mutual responsibility for these three different variables? In the past, we might say, well, the leader, she does that. She's responsible for making these things happen. And it's true at the end of the day. And I always begin every course that I teach with this simple point that as a leader, you are responsible for getting results in the role that you're in. That's why organizations have leaders. Initiatives and development is essential, but we can never lose sight of the fact that we hire leaders in organizations to get results. If we can't get results, if leaders struggle in that area, then you're going to have a hard time being effective as a leader. But the way we go about getting those results has to do with these three elements, making sure we have clear direction, that everyone understands, that we have good alignment and commitment. So while the responsibility may seem to fall on just one leader or a small set, what we're trying to take people away from is the concept that the leader, he or she, has to do all of this. And one of the things I did with my team yesterday, I said, are we absolutely clear as we've talked about our goals, we talked about our KPIs, we talked about our values and our purpose as a team, are we clear that this success and process that we're calling leadership is really everyone's responsibility? And everyone agreed. We'll see if that happens over time. I think it will. But the idea is leadership happens in these exchanges and interactions day to day, and it's among all the members of a group. So if you're in a team and your team is not clear on direction, alignment, and commitment, you have a responsibility, even if you're not the team leader, to help try to foment thinking around how do we get that. Now, lest you think that this is dissociated from some research, it isn't. It comes from this paper in Leadership Quarterly, which is one of the stronger journals, specifically related to leadership. And what we see here is a basic operational model that we would test in academics. So we'll start on the right-hand side, and what we're looking at and asking ourselves, and think about this in the context of the teams that you're on, what do we want? We want long-term outcomes. That's a nice way of saying results, as I mentioned earlier. We know that results come from direction, alignment, commitment. So what does that look like? On a team, here's the things that have to happen in order to get that team, whatever curve or maturity model you use, whether it's something from Lencioni or you think about it from any particular framework. We have to understand on our team what everybody's individual beliefs are about leadership. And that's why I asked that question at the outset, because some of us learn leadership from our parents. Some of us learned it from a sports team. Some of us learned it from a boss or a community organization or the military or a religious organization. Everyone brings a set of values and beliefs to the table about leadership. A leader's job and the team leader's job is to get those out and create a set of collective beliefs. What's important about how we will understand the governance process and the leadership development process on our team. And that transitions into a set of practices, how we will interact, how we will communicate, even things as simple as, will we have an agenda? Will someone take meeting notes? How will we follow up and keep action items? If there's conflict, how do we handle that? All these things might seem very tactical, yet they're essential to making sure the leadership culture comes out in a written and in many cases in an unwritten form. You have a set of rules on your teams, whether or not you even think about it. But the question then becomes, how do we create those rules? Where do they come from? And how do we change them over time if they're not working effectively for us? So the idea is going back and revisiting direction, alignment, commitment is a way to do that. So the takeaway for us today is to think about a positive culture, and in a positive culture, what does leadership look like? First off, it's not about, as we start at the bottom, people who are in authority and they're just exclusively responsible for leadership. We don't see that level of quote-unquote dependency anymore. We also acknowledge that there might be some level of independence, but it's not about heroic action anymore, where one person sort of steps up and gets the team over the line. Those make for great movies. They don't make for great effectiveness long-term on teams. What we have to try to understand is it's a collective activity that everybody has to participate in a very dynamic, interactive, and exchange-oriented way. Now, what I would encourage you to do is, if you want to actually test this, you can go to CCL, Center for Creative Leadership, and you can follow that link right there. I'll put it in the chat after we have our discussion here. And you can go and actually download this or take it online for your team. So you can test, and you can see right there whether or not your team has direction on alignment and commitment. And if it doesn't, you do this independently and you aggregate the results. Where it doesn't, you want to have a conversation about how do you get it. So it's a very tangible, tactical way to ensure that your teams are working at the highest levels possible. So I just want to leave you with a few things to keep in mind. Again, your job as a leader, whether you come here or not, we certainly encourage you to, because we'll spend a lot more time talking about how you can get these results and be an effective leader. Your job is to get long-term outcomes or results. You have to understand how you think about leadership and your teammates do. You have to come up with a common set of understanding and beliefs and practices that enable your team to work effectively, and regardless of what level you're at. And this is true of these senior-most teams as well as lower levels in any organization. And you have to create a culture of leadership and leader development. But remember, you want to try to work your team towards clear and unambiguous consensus around direction, alignment, and commitment. And that's what drives long-term outcome for the organization and for you, results as a leader. So thanks for your time today. I'm going to turn it back over to my esteemed colleagues, and I'll also put that link in the chat for those of you who are interested. And I think we may have some time, Peter and Larissa, if I'm not mistaken, to take some questions.
We do have some time. Ed, always a pleasure. That was fantastic. And one of the many things that I enjoy about working with you and about that presentation is it's so emblematic of MTL in that our faculty come with the world of practical professional experience that's backed up by some very deep thinking and on the theories of whatever their subject is. And I think your quick snapshot certainly gave us a little taste of that. So we appreciate that very much. Okay, Emma, do we have any questions from our audience?
So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The first question that I see here is, how have you seen graduates utilize the degree to move up within their company or transition to new roles?
Who would like to take that? I mean, I'm happy to take a first stab at it because, I get the opportunity to work on the front line with leaders.
Sure.
Over the 12 months in technology companies can be a long time. You see a lot of things happen. We typically see people getting in positions very quickly for advancement. I mean, to be honest, a Brown degree carries a lot of weight in an organization, and more than just the name of the school. The skills that people are picking up as part of the program is essential. People are working on, to Larissa's point, a project that oftentimes links back to something at work. So they're really applying and getting value for what they're studying here right away. But we see it's a means to start separating themselves within the organization. And I have worked alongside of many, many people in the different cohorts that we've had to talk through, how do we approach opportunities? How do we get in position, taking on new jobs? I've seen people take quite a bit of new responsibilities, even start organizations as part of the program. So I think the grounding that we give people, really, because it is so focused on leadership and technology, it almost sort of separates them from the pack a little bit. Peter, is that a fair characterization?
I think it's well said, Ed. I'll only add a tiny little bit. One of the things that really helps our students move in their organization is the course that Larissa teaches, the Critical Challenge Project. So a lot of our students will take a problem from their employer. And these can be kind of high risk, high reward, sort of thing like, if we had the time or the bandwidth or the money to address that question, that would be wonderful, but we often don't. So we put it off in a parking lot. But hey, if you're at Brown and you have the resources of an Ivy League institution, why don't you go for it? And I think when students do that, when they're socialized that they want to take on that very complex, difficult challenge at work and use their degree to help them solve it, that invariably really propels them to much. It just gives them a lot more visibility. And in fact, we have a letter on our website. You're free to use it however you want. It's a template that describes the value of the CCP to an employer, often helps students leverage more tuition assistance because they're solving a real world problem and they're bringing, again, those real world skills that Ed has been talking about to their workplace every day. And of course, their superiors are going to see them change in real time. Another question.
Yes, a question that just came in. What is the process for working with professors on work? By that, I mean I travel about 30 days a year and am completely out of contact due to the customer I support. It's not consecutive, but roughly equals that time frame.
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. So you do need to be here in person, the 2 4-day periods that we talked about in September and in February. Hopefully you can schedule your work commitments around those. Those dates are set in stone, and hopefully you can navigate that. The courses otherwise are hybrid, so you're online, and you're doing it essentially on your own time. However, there are every week live synchronous Zoom sessions. They are recorded if you can't make it. So for different time zones, or if you're on travel, you can watch them. But those Zoom sessions are an opportunity for you to work with your teammates, with your classmates. It gives you that deeper exposure to the faculty. So that's one of the things that we're always trying to do, that even though you're not living here in Providence, is to give you as much exposure to our faculty, to our TAs, and to fellow students as possible. So that's in the form of open office hours, lab sessions, lectures, guest lectures. Those all happen in real time in the evening, but again, they're recorded. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, one thing I'd just add on to that real quickly, Peter. It's interesting. I was in office hours last night when I was talking with our cohort. One of the things I was working on with them, because part of the program has to do with coaching, and there's an online preparation, there's responses, there's readings, there's cases in some instances, there's responses and reflections, and not only individually but as a group. And I had asked the question, how many people here took all of your vacation last year? It was like almost nobody on the call, a handful of people. So we started going through that process of discussing that. But one of the things that came out that I thought was really interesting, I hadn't planned for, was several people said, this program is me time. This is the time that I get to spend doing something that's for me, having the cohort and building the relationships. So I actually look forward to coming to Providence. I look forward to being with my cohort. I would say the camaraderie and the mutual support that comes out of the program is really impressive. People have a tremendous sense of wanting and willing the good of the other, wanting people to succeed, and really sharing tips and techniques. Like somebody on the call last night said, I got a virtual admin assistant and that's changed my life, and someone loved that. So we really try to create this environment where people are not just going through the academics and applying the things we talk, but building a sense of camaraderie. And that's as much about leadership as anything else.
One of the really joyous things about this program is to see that camaraderie continue after they graduate. Larisa and I, the faculty, we get emails routinely. There's a pop-up dinner in DC or New York or San Francisco, wherever there happened to be, where somebody was on travel and they happened to be in Chicago, and they said, hey, why don't we all get together like we used to? Or they fly to each other's life events, births and weddings. So you are building your network, not just within MTL, which remains very close, but you're also part of the Brown alumni network of 100,000 Brown University grads around the world. And guaranteed there's a Brown alumni chapter in your city, and they're very active. So great point. Anything else, Emma? Any other questions?
Yes, thank you for that. I see another question that came in here. How does the coursework connect to real world impacts, specifically with a cohort made of students with such varied experiences?
I think our academic directors should take that one.
I'll take that. By definition, all of our courses have practical implications. So what you're learning, you get to apply in your jobs almost in real time, whatever applies to you. You also can benefit from your peers or from different industries and what you learn from them. We've had stories of our students who were trying to implement something, but then learned from somebody in a different industry how they do it, and was able to save tremendous amount of effort and time and cost and get the job done. So there is cross-pollination in that regard. And then not to tout the CCP course, but that is how you really can take everything that you've learned and apply it very strategically to solving an important problem, and that will increase your visibility, increase your connections, and also teach you how to put this into practice.
Thank you, Larisa.
Terrific.
So it looks like that was our last question.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of our faculty, Ed, our academic director, Larisa, Emma, we thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We can circulate this recording to you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us or again, professional@brown.edu. Be well, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.